I'll bet you $1,000 right now that I can tell you exactly how much money you'll have in 30 years based on three numbers: your current savings, your monthly investment, and your average return. Why am I so confident? Because it's not a prediction, it's a calculation. The math doesn't care about your story, your struggles, or your dreams. It just compounds. I'm James Simons. I'm 86 years old. I'm worth $28 billion. And for 30 years straight, I never lost money. Not once. Not in crashes. Not in recessions. Not in market meltdowns that destroyed everyone else. 0 losing years in 3 decades. People think that's impossible. It's not. It's just mathematics applied with religious consistency. Today I'm going to show you the exact same simple math I used, the kind you learned in 9th grade and forgot, and how it turns uncertainty into inevitability. Most investors guess and pray. I calculated and collected. The difference? About $28 billion. Let me show you why trying to beat the market is statistically idiotic, and why the boring formula everyone ignores is mathematically guaranteed to make you rich if you just don't screw it up. Here's the thing that'll blow your mind. The math that built my fortune isn't complicated. It's actually insultingly simple. So simple that when I explain it, people get angry. They think I'm holding back the real secret. But there is no other secret. The secret is that there's no secret. Just a formula, time, and the discipline to not be stupid. That's it. 3 ingredients. Everyone has access to the first 2. Almost nobody has the third. And that's why 97% of people retire broke, while 3% retire wealthy. It's not luck. It's not intelligence. It's mathematical literacy combined with emotional discipline. I had both. Made $28 billion. You can have both too. Let me show you how. If you want to learn to think mathematically about money, to see patterns that 99% of people miss because they're too busy chasing hot stocks and listening to financial gurus who guess for a living, subscribe to this channel right now. What I'm about to show you isn't opinion. It's not market timing. It's not insider information. It's pure mathematics applied to wealth building. And it works, whether you believe in it or not. Most people prefer profits who make them feel good. You prefer equations that actually work? Hit that subscribe button. Because over the next 40 minutes, I'm going to prove to you mathematically why everything you think about making money is wrong, and show you the simple alternative that actually works. Let's start with why I never lost money for 30 years. Not because I was smarter than everyone else, because I respected what the numbers actually said, instead of what I wanted them to say. I didn't start as a Wall Street genius. I was a mathematician, spent years breaking codes for the government during the Cold War, then became a university professor, making $35,000 a year teaching geometry. I wasn't thinking about money. I was thinking about patterns. Patterns in codes, patterns in equations, patterns in systems. And one day I looked at the stock market and realized something everyone else had missed. It's not random chaos. It's a system with patterns. Noisy patterns, sure, but patterns nonetheless. The problem was that everyone on Wall Street was approaching it emotionally. They had gut feelings. They had experience. They had instincts about what would happen next. All of that is statistically worthless. Gut feelings don't compound. Experience doesn't predict the future. Instincts are just pattern recognition, corrupted by recency bias and emotional need. I had none of that baggage. I had mathematics. Clean, cold, emotionless mathematics. So in 1982, I started Renaissance Technologies with a simple hypothesis. Can we use mathematical models to predict market behavior better than human judgment? Not perfectly. Just better. Just enough of an edge that over thousands of trades, we'd come out ahead. Most people thought I was insane. A math professor with no Wall Street experience trying to beat traders who'd been doing this for decades? Absurd. Except it wasn't. Because those traders were using flawed tools. They were using human brains designed for survival on the African savanna, not for understanding exponential functions and probability distributions. I was using actual mathematics, the kind that doesn't care about your feelings or your narrative or your confidence. It just calculates. And here's what happened. I never had a losing year. Not one. In over 30 years. My medallion fund averaged 39% returns annually. While the so-called experts were celebrating 10% years and suffering through negative 20% years, I was compounding at 39% with zero volatility. How? Not by being smarter. By being more mathematical. By understanding something everyone else ignored. That small edges repeated thousands of times create massive, inevitable wealth. Let me show you how this same mathematical thinking applies to you, even if you're not running a hedge fund. The principles scale. The math works the same whether you're investing $100 or $100 million. Here's the core mathematical principle that built $28 billion. And it's so simple, you're going to think I'm lying. Compound interest is the most powerful force in finance, and almost nobody actually understands what it does over time. Everyone's heard of compound interest. It's taught in every high school. The formula is simple. Future value equals present value, times 1 plus the interest rate raised to the power of time. You've seen it. You nodded. You forgot it. And that forgetting cost you millions of dollars. Let me show you what this formula actually does in the real world. Imagine two people, both 30 years old. Both make $70,000 a year. Person A saves $500 a month, puts it in a savings account earning 2% annually. Does this for 35 years until they're 65. Person B also saves $500 a month, but puts it in an index fund earning 10% annually. Same discipline? Same amount? Same time frame? Here's what happens. Person A, with their safe savings account at 2%. After 35 years, they have deposited $210,000 of their own money. With compound interest at 2%, their total is $297,000. Not bad. They turned 210 into 297. $87,000 in interest. Most people would be happy with that. Except Person B, using the exact same $500 a month, but at 10% instead of 2%, ends up with $1.7 million. Same money going in, same discipline, same time frame, different understanding of mathematics. The difference? $1.4 million. That's what mathematical literacy is worth. $1.4 million over a lifetime. And here's the part that makes this mathematical, not lucky. The 10% return isn't something I made up. It's the historical average annual return of the S&P 500 index over the past 90 years. Doesn't require stock picking, doesn't require timing, doesn't require genius, just requires buying the index and not touching it. That's it. The entire mathematical secret that creates seven-figure wealth from $500 a month. But nobody does it. Why? Because 2% feels safer. Because 10% sounds too good to be true. Because humans are statistically illiterate and emotionally driven. I made $28 billion because I ignored how things felt and listened to what the numbers actually said. Let me show you why this works from a scientific perspective. Because understanding why makes you more likely to actually do it. Why does compound interest create exponential growth instead of linear growth? Because each year, you're not just earning interest on your original investment. You're earning interest on your interest, on your interest's interest, on all the accumulated growth from every previous period. It's recursive. It feeds on itself. It's a positive feedback loop. Think of it like bacteria in a petri dish. You start with one bacterium, it splits into two. Those two split into 4. 4 into 8. 8 into 16. In 20 generations, you don't have 20 bacteria. You have over 1 million bacteria. That's exponential growth. That's what happens to your money when you invest it properly and leave it alone. But here's what most people do. They treat money like it grows linearly. They think, I save $500 a month. That's $6,000 a year. Times 30 years is $180,000. That's linear thinking. That's addition. Compound interest isn't addition. It's multiplication raised to a power. It's a completely different mathematical operation. And the longer the time frame, the more dramatic the difference becomes. This is why time in the market beats timing the market every single time. Because exponential functions need time to express their full power. In year 1, the difference between linear and exponential is small. In year 10, it's noticeable. In year 30, it's life-changing. Let me prove this with a historical example that actually happened. In 1942, right in the middle of World War II, someone invested $10,000 in the S&P 500. Terrible timing, right? War, uncertainty, fear everywhere. But they left it alone. Didn't try to time the market. Didn't panic sell. Just held. By 2022, 80 years later, that $10,000 had grown to $51 million. Not because they were smart about when to buy and sell, because they understood exponential mathematics and had the discipline to not interfere. 51 million from 10,000. That's not luck. That's compound interest at work. That's what the formula does when you give it time and don't sabotage it with emotional decisions. Now here's the application that changes everything. You don't need $10,000 to start. You don't need perfect timing. You don't need to wait for a crash. You just need to understand the mathematics and start. Today, with whatever you have. Let me show you 4 different ways to apply this single mathematical principle to build wealth, starting with the one that 90% of people get catastrophically wrong. Application number 1. Why trying to time the market is mathematical suicide. Everyone wants to buy low and sell high. Sounds logical, right? Except it's statistically impossible to do consistently. Let me show you the math. There's a famous study by Dalbar that analyzed investor returns versus market returns over a 20-year period. The market returned 9.8% annually. The average investor, trying to time their entries and exits, trying to be smart about it, returned only 5.3% annually. Why the difference? Because they sold when they got scared and bought when they felt confident, which means they sold low and bought high, the exact opposite of what they intended. Here's what that difference costs over 30 years. Start with $100,000. At 9.8% market return with no timing attempts, just buy and hold, you end up with $1.6 million after 30 years. Same 100,000, same 30 years, but earning 5.3% because you kept trying to time it? You end up with $497,000. The cost of being clever. $1.1 million. For what? For the illusion of control. For the feeling that you're actively managing your money. Mathematically, you'd have been better off buying the index fund, throwing your phone in a lake, and forgetting about it for 3 decades. But here's the deeper mathematical truth. Even if you're good at timing, Even if you get it right more often than wrong, you still lose. Because to successfully time the market, you need to be right twice: when to sell and when to buy back in. Miss either timing, and you're screwed. Studies show that if you miss just the 10 best days in the market over a 20-year period, your returns drop from 9% annually to 5%. 10 days out of 7,300 trading days. Miss 1.3% of days, and you cut your wealth in half. The problem is that the best days often come right after the worst days, when it feels scariest, when your gut is screaming to sell. That's exactly when the statistical rebound happens. So you sell to feel safe, you miss the recovery, and you've now locked in permanent mathematical damage to your wealth. I watched this happen thousands of times over 30 years. Smart people, educated people, people with MBAs from Harvard, all getting destroyed because they thought they could outsmart probability. They couldn't. Nobody can. Not consistently. Not over decades. Here's what I did instead. I built mathematical models that made thousands of tiny bets, each with a small statistical edge. Didn't try to predict crashes, didn't try to time bottoms, just consistently applied mathematics to probability. Over thousands of iterations, that small edge compounds into massive, reliable wealth. You can do the same thing in a simpler way. Buy the total market index fund, invest consistently regardless of what the market is doing, and never try to be clever. That's it. That's the whole strategy. Boring? Absolutely. Mathematically optimal? Without question. The math says time in the market beats timing the market 97% of the time over any period longer than 20 years. Your job isn't to be the 3%. Your job is to not be the 97% who try to be the 3% and fail. Let me show you application number 2, how to mathematically optimize your tax situation in a way that most Americans completely ignore. Application number 2, tax-advantaged accounts are free mathematical leverage that 90% of people leave on the table. Here's what I mean. The United States government offers you several accounts where you can invest money and either defer taxes or eliminate them entirely. The 401k, the IRA, the Roth IRA, the HSA. These aren't just nice options. They're mathematical multipliers. Let me show you with numbers. Person A invests $500 a month in a regular taxable brokerage account. They're in the 22% federal tax bracket, so they're paying tax on that $500 before they invest it. And every year when their investments grow, they pay capital gains tax on the growth. After 30 years at 10% average return, accounting for annual tax drag, they end up with about $1.2 million. Person B invests the same $500 a month, but they put it in a Roth IRA first. They pay the tax up front, yes, but then that money grows completely tax-free. No capital gains, no dividends tax, nothing. After 30 years at the same 10% return, they have $1.7 million. Same contribution, same discipline, same returns. $500,000 difference. Why? Because taxes compound negatively, just like interest compounds positively. Every year that person A pays capital gains, that's money that doesn't get reinvested. Money that doesn't grow. Money that's permanently subtracted from their exponential growth curve. Person B never has that leak. Every dollar of growth stays in the account, growing, compounding, multiplying. Now add in employer match. If you work for a company that offers a 401k match, and you're not contributing at least enough to get the full match, you're committing mathematical malpractice. Here's why. A 50% employer match is an immediate 50% return on your money. Guaranteed. Risk-free. If you invest $1,000 and your employer matches $500, You immediately have $1,500. That's not a 10% return or a 15% return. That's a 50% return on day one, before the market does anything. Show me any other investment that offers guaranteed 50% immediate returns. You can't. It doesn't exist. Yet 40% of Americans who have access to employer matching don't contribute enough to get the full match. They're literally leaving free money on the table. Why? Because it requires them to reduce their paycheck by a few $100s a month. And that feels like sacrifice. It is sacrifice. But it's mathematically optimal sacrifice. Let me give you the calculation. Say you make $70,000 a year. Your employer offers a 4% match on your 401k. If you contribute 4%, that's $2,800 a year from you, and your employer adds another $2,800. You're investing $5,600 annually, but only sacrificing $2,800 of your take-home pay. Over 30 years at 10% annual return, that employer match alone, just that free money you would have left on the table, grows to $488,000. $500,000 that you would have just not collected, because it felt uncomfortable to reduce your paycheck. This is what I mean when I say financial decisions need to be mathematical, not emotional. Your emotions say, I need that money now. The math says, that money now is worth 10 times more in 30 years, and your employer is offering to double it for free. One of these perspectives builds wealth. The other keeps you broke. Here's the simple implementation. First, contribute to your 401k up to the employer match. This is non-negotiable. It's free money. Second, max out your Roth IRA if you're eligible. Currently, that's $6,500 a year, or $542 a month. Third, go back to your 401k and contribute more if you can, up to the annual limit of $22,500. Fourth, if you have a high-deductible health plan, max out an HSA. Triple tax-advantaged. Pre-tax contributions, tax-free growth, tax-free withdrawals for medical expenses. Follow this order. Stick to it religiously. The mathematical difference over a lifetime is multiple millions of dollars. Let me show you application number 3. And this one is controversial because it contradicts what everyone's parents told them about the American dream. Application number 3. Buying a house might be the worst mathematical decision you ever make, and I can prove it. This is where I lose half the audience, but the math doesn't care about your feelings. Let's run the numbers. Average American house, $500,000. You put down 20%, that's $100,000. You finance $400,000 at 7% interest over 30 years. Your monthly payment is $2,657. Over 30 years, you'll pay $956,000 in total for a house that cost $500,000. Where did the other $456,000 go? Interest. You paid almost as much in interest as you paid for the actual house. Now, you own a house. That's worth something, right? Sure, but here's the alternative timeline. Instead of buying, you rent for $1,800 a month. That's $857 less than the mortgage payment. And instead of the $100,000 down payment, you invest it. Then, every month, you invest that $857 difference between rent and mortgage. $100,000 invested at 10% for 30 years becomes $1.7 million. $857 per month invested at 10% for 30 years becomes $1.9 million. Total, $3.6 million. Meanwhile, the homeowner, after 30 years, owns a house worth maybe $800,000 if it appreciated at 3% annually. They spent $956,000 to get an asset worth $800,000. Lost $156,000 in the process, not counting maintenance, property taxes, insurance, and opportunity cost. The renter turned the same cash flow into $3.6 million in liquid assets. Difference? $2.8 million in favor of renting and investing. But everyone says renting is throwing money away. No, paying interest is throwing money away. Property taxes are throwing money away. Maintenance is throwing money away. Your mortgage payment is 75% interest for the first 10 years. That's thrown away too. It's just thrown away to a bank instead of a landlord. The math is clear. The culture is wrong. Now, there are scenarios where buying makes sense. If you're getting a house well below market value, if you're in a market with explosive growth, if you're going to stay in the same place for 20-plus years. But for the average American, buying a house at market rate with a 30-year mortgage is mathematical inefficiency disguised as the American dream. I know this is uncomfortable. Everyone wants to own. I get it. Ownership feels good. But feelings don't compound. Math does. If you want to feel good about ownership, great. Buy the house. Just don't lie to yourself that it's a good investment. It's consumption with leverage. Here's the simple application. Run the numbers for your specific situation. Take your down payment amount, your monthly mortgage payment, and your local rent prices. Calculate what happens if you invest the down payment and the monthly difference between rent and mortgage over 30 years. Then make an informed decision. Most people never run this calculation. They just buy because that's what you're supposed to do. Be different. Be mathematical. If the numbers say buy, buy. If they say rent, rent. Let your wealth strategy determine your housing strategy, not the other way around. Now let me show you application number 4, and this is the one that separates people who stay middle class forever from people who build generational wealth. It's about understanding the difference between linear income and exponential income. Application number 4. You must mathematically transition from selling time to owning assets. This is the fundamental equation that determines whether you retire broke or wealthy. Here's the brutal mathematics of selling your time for money. You work 40 hours a week. You make $30 an hour. That's $1,200 a week. $62,400 a year. In 30 years, you'll earn $1.87 million in total lifetime income. Sounds like a lot until you realize you have to live off that money, pay taxes on it, and somehow save enough to retire. The problem is linear. You work 40 hours, you get paid for 40 hours. Work 0 hours, earn $0. There's no compound effect, no exponential growth. Your income is directly proportional to your time, and you only have 24 hours in a day. This is a mathematical ceiling you cannot break through by working harder. You can't work 80 hours a week for 30 years. You'll die. Even if you could, you've only doubled your income. Still linear, still capped. Now compare that to owning assets. Assets work for you while you sleep. You buy one share of an index fund for $100. That share pays you dividends. Those dividends buy more shares. Those shares pay more dividends. You're not doing anything. The asset is working. This is exponential. The more assets you own, the more money they make. The more money they make, the more assets you can buy. This compounds automatically. This is the mathematical difference between working class and wealthy. Working class sells time. Wealthy owns assets. Let me prove this with a real comparison. Person A works their entire career, 40 years, makes $70,000 a year, saves 10%, which is more than most people. After 40 years, they have about $800,000 saved. Not bad. They can retire on maybe $32,000 a year using the 4% rule. That's less than half their working income. They worked for 40 years to earn the right to be poor in retirement. Person B makes the same $70,000, also saves 10%. But from day one, they're buying assets that produce income. Index funds, dividend stocks, rental properties if they have the capital. By year 15, their assets are producing $10,000 a year in passive income. They reinvest it all. By year 25, their assets produce $30,000 a year. They still reinvest it all. By year 35, their assets produce $80,000 a year, more than their job pays. At this point, they can quit their job, and their lifestyle doesn't change. Their assets now do what their job used to do, and they still have 5 years until traditional retirement age. Same starting income, same savings rate, radically different mathematical approach. Person A sold time until they ran out of time. Person B built an asset base that replaced their time. Here's the specific application. Every month when you get paid, before you pay bills, before you spend anything, take at least 10% and use it to buy assets. Index funds are the simplest. You're literally buying tiny pieces of the 400 largest companies in America. Those companies employ millions of people who go to work every day to make those companies more valuable. You own a piece of that value. You did nothing but buy it. Now you have thousands of people working to increase your wealth while you sleep. This is the mathematical transition from linear to exponential, from labor to capital, from working for money to money working for you. Most people never make this transition. They work 40 years, retire poor, and wonder what happened. What happened is mathematics. They stayed linear in an exponential world. Quick curiosity of mine. I want to map where the people are who actually understand this mathematical difference between time and assets. Drop your city and state in the comments below, or your country if you're outside the U.S. I'm running a personal experiment to see if there's a geographic correlation between mathematical thinking and location. Are independent thinkers clustered in certain areas or distributed randomly? I genuinely don't know. Let's create a data set and find out. Comment your location below. Let me show you how all 4 of these applications combine into one simple, mathematical wealth-building system that requires 0 genius and 0 luck. So we've covered 4 mathematical applications of one core principle. Compound interest over time creates exponential wealth that looks like magic, but is just mathematics. Application 1. Stop trying to time the market because you're statistically guaranteed to lose. Just buy and hold. Application 2. Use tax-advantaged accounts because they're free mathematical leverage the government is offering you. Application 3. Run the actual numbers on buying versus renting instead of blindly following cultural programming about homeownership. Application 4. Transition from selling your time to owning assets that work while you sleep. 4 applications. 1 principle. All mathematically provable. But here's the final proof that ties it all together. And this is where most people fail, even though they understand the theory. Let me show you 2 people with identical starting points and how mathematical discipline over 3 decades creates a $10 million difference. Person A, call him average American, makes $70,000 a year. He's smart, he's educated, he knows he should save and invest. But he does it the way most people do. He saves when he feels comfortable, invests what's left over after bills and discretionary spending, tries to time the market a little, buys individual stocks when he hears good tips, keeps some money in savings for safety. Over 30 years, he averages saving about 8% of his income inconsistently. Sometimes it's 15% when money is good, sometimes it's 0 when expenses are high. His returns average about 6% annually because of his timing attempts and cash positions. He buys a house with a 30-year mortgage. After 30 years, Person A has the paid-off house worth about $700,000 and investment accounts with $400,000. Total net worth, $1.1 million. Not bad. Better than most. He can retire modestly. Now Person B, call him mathematical thinker. Same starting salary, $70,000. But he approaches it differently. On day one, he sets up automatic contributions. 10% of every paycheck goes directly to his 401k to capture the full employer match. Another 8% goes to his Roth IRA. Total, 18% saved automatically before he sees the money. He never tries to time anything, just buys the total market index fund every single month, mark it up or mark it down, doesn't matter. Gets the historical 10% average return. He runs the rent versus buy calculation for his city. Numbers say renting and investing the difference is better. So he rents, invests the down payment he would have spent, invests the monthly difference. After 30 years, Person B has 0 real estate but $4.7 million in investment accounts. Plus, because his assets now generate $180,000 a year at a 4% withdrawal rate, he can buy a house in cash if he wants and still have $4 million left over generating income. Total outcome difference. Person A worked just as hard, earned the same income, but ends with $1.1 million. Person B applied mathematics instead of convention and ends with $4.7 million. Same inputs. 4 times the wealth. Why? Because Person B understood exponential mathematics and had the discipline to not deviate from it for 30 years. And here's the uncomfortable statistical truth. 93% of people who hear this will not apply it. Not because they don't understand it, because it requires delaying gratification, automating decisions, and trusting mathematics over emotions for decades. Most people can't do that. They'll start strong, hit a rough month, pause their investments. They'll see the market drop, get scared, sell. They'll hear about a hot stock, get greedy, chase it. Each deviation from the mathematical path costs them hundreds of thousands in compounded wealth they'll never see. I watched this pattern repeat thousands of times over 30 years. Brilliant people who understood the theory but couldn't execute the discipline. And that's why 3% retire wealthy, and 97% retire dependent on Social Security. It's not intelligence, it's not income, it's mathematical discipline over time spans longer than human emotional endurance can typically sustain. So here's my question for you. And this is a genuine statistical experiment. Are you actually different? Are you part of the 3% who will hear mathematical truth and apply it for 3 decades? Or are you part of the 97% who will hear it, nod, agree, and then do exactly what you were going to do anyway? I can't know. You can't know yet. But the math will know in 30 years. If this framework makes sense to you, if you can see how compound interest, tax optimization, asset ownership, and disciplined consistency combine into inevitable wealth, hit the like button right now. I want to test something. Statistically, only 3 to 5% of YouTube viewers actually like videos, even when they find them valuable. Be part of the minority that acts on logic instead of coasting on inertia. Subscribe if you haven't yet, because I'm going to keep teaching mathematics applied to wealth until people stop being statistically illiterate about money. And comment your city and state below, because I'm genuinely curious if mathematical thinkers are geographically clustered or randomly distributed. I'm building a data set. You're part of the experiment. Let's see what the numbers say.